Standing in front of a Maya pyramid today, you're looking at something that shouldn't exist. No wheels, no metal tools, no horses, no oxen, no machinery. Just humans, stones, and an engineering genius that built cities larger than most European capitals of the same era. And before you ask, no, it wasn't aliens. It was something way more impressive. Human beings who were really good at their jobs. Urban scale and scope. Maya civilization stretched across what we now call Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador for over 3,000 years. Their cities housed tens of thousands of people, sometimes hundreds of thousands. Tikal alone had up to 240,000 residents at its peak. For context, that's roughly the size of Orlando, Florida today, except they built it without a single Home Depot in sight. These weren't small villages. They were massive urban centers with pyramids that stood taller than a 15-story building, palaces with multiple floors, intricate water systems, and roads connecting everything together. No wheels, no metal, no beasts. Here's the kicker. They built all this without the basic tools that we associate with ancient construction anywhere else in the world. The Egyptians had copper tools in the wheel. The Romans had iron and oxen. The Maya looked at that list and said, you know what? We're good. The reason they didn't have wheels wasn't because they couldn't figure them out. Maya children actually played with toys that had wheels on them. Let that sink in for a second. They knew about wheels. They just chose not to use them for transportation because, and this is crucial, they would have been completely useless. Dense jungle covered everything. Steep terrain, muddy ground during rainy season, roots and vegetation blocking every path. A wheeled cart in Maya territory would be about as useful as a sports car in a swamp. You couldn't push it through that landscape even if you wanted to. So instead of fighting their environment, they adapted to it, which is more than we can say for people who buy pickup trucks and never haul anything. Metal tools were scarce for a different reason. The core Maya territories just didn't have accessible metal ore deposits. Later on, during what archaeologists call the post-classic period after 900 CE, they did start using some copper, but mainly for jewelry and decorative items, not construction tools. Basically, they had enough metal for bling but not for building, which honestly sounds like a budgeting problem some of us can relate to. Draft animals didn't exist in their region either. Horses weren't native to the Americas. They went extinct thousands of years before Maya cities rose. The Spanish brought them back in the 1500s, presumably while saying, hey, you guys are missing out on these. There were no oxen, no donkeys, nothing large enough to pull heavy loads. The biggest domesticated animal the Maya had was the dog, and that wasn't going to haul limestone blocks unless it was some kind of super dog we don't know about. Everything came down to human power, organization, and really smart engineering decisions. Limestone, the core material. Now let's talk about what they actually built with. Limestone was everywhere. The Yucatan Peninsula and surrounding lowlands sit on a massive limestone bedrock. The Maya basically lived on top of their construction material, which is like living in a quarry and complaining you don't have anything to build with. Instead of seeing this as a limitation, they turned it into their primary advantage. They used different types of limestone for different purposes. The hard, dense varieties, called choctunich, worked perfectly for building facades and monuments that needed to last. Softer limestone, called sascab, became fill material, mortar, and the base for plaster. This wasn't random. They understood the properties of each type and used them strategically. They were doing material science before material science was cool. Quarrying happened right next to building sites whenever possible. Why transport stone 60 miles if you can extract it 60 feet away? It's the same logic as not driving to another state for groceries when there's a store down the street. At Tikal and Palenque, builders took limestone directly from nearby quarries. The marks left on quarry walls tell us exactly how they did it. Workers used stone tools to create notches in the rock, then inserted wooden stakes into those notches. They'd soak the wood with water, and as it expanded, the pressure would crack the stones along natural lines. Fire was another technique, heating the rock until it fractured, making it easier to break off chunks. Inventing burnt lime cement. But here's something wild. Around 300 BCE, the Maya invented burnt lime cement. This is before the Romans perfected their concrete. Yes, you heard that right. While the Romans were still figuring things out, the Maya were already mixing up concrete in Mesoamerica. The process involved heating limestone in kilns to extreme temperatures, turning it into quicklime. Mix that quicklime with water and aggregate materials, and you get a cement that's incredibly strong and water resistant. This cement held their structures together and created the stucco that covered exterior walls. That stucco layer protected buildings from humidity and provided a smooth surface for the vibrant red, yellow, green, and blue paint that decorated every major structure. Stone tools, super precision. Tools they used to shape all this stone were deceptively simple but incredibly effective. Chert, which is a type of flint, could be shaped into axes, spear points, and cutting implements. It's hard enough to chip away at limestone without breaking apart. Obsidian came from volcanic regions and could be worked into blades sharper than modern surgical steel. Seriously, some surgeons today use obsidian scalpels because the edge is finer than metal. So the next time someone tells you old technology was inferior, remind them that doctors are literally going back to Stone Age blades for precision work. Maya workers used obsidian blades to cut wood and even carve details into stone. Basalt axes, imported from volcanic areas, handled the heavy work of felling trees and rough shaping. For really precise carving like the intricate glyphs on stele or the serpent masks on temple facades, they used jadeite chisels. Jadeite is harder than iron. A skilled carver with a jadeite chisel and stone mallet could create details that looked like they were done with modern tools. The glyph-covered monuments we see today, some with text running across entire wall sections, were all carved this way. Imagine writing an entire novel by chiseling it into stone. That's commitment to your craft. Finishing work involved abrasive sands to polish surfaces smooth. Wooden mallets drove stones into position without chipping them. Drill holes in quarried blocks show where they made precise openings for wooden cross ties or architectural features. Every single cut, every smooth surface, every carved figure was done by hand with stone implements. The time investment was enormous, but the results lasted over 1,000 years, which is more than you can say for most things bought on Amazon. How they moved megastones. Now comes the really challenging part, moving these stones. Some pyramid blocks weighed over 100 kilograms. It's like moving a refrigerator, except the refrigerator is made of solid rock and your nearest appliance dolly won't be invented for another 1,000 years. Temple lintels carved from single pieces of sapodilla wood weighed even more. Without wheels or animals, every single stone was carried by human workers using a tool called a tump line, or mekapal in Maya language. This was a leather strap that went across the forehead and attached to whatever load you were carrying on your back. This might sound uncomfortable or inefficient, but it's actually brilliant biomechanics. The tump line distributes weight along your spine and uses your leg muscles, which are the strongest in your body, for lifting. Your neck muscles stabilize everything. People in Maya region still use tump lines today for carrying heavy loads through jungle terrain where vehicles can't go. A single person can transport 50 to 100 kilograms this way, and they can do it for miles. Meanwhile, most of us struggle carrying groceries from the car to the kitchen. For the truly massive stones, teams of workers use sledges or rollers. We don't have much direct evidence of this because wood doesn't preserve well in tropical climates, but the logic is straightforward. Put a heavy stone on wooden poles, get enough people pulling together, and you can move almost anything. It's the same principle as moving a couch, except the couch weighs several tons and there's no pizza waiting at the end. Sakbayab, the white roads. The key was having a smooth path to move along. That's where the Sakbayab come in. These were raised roads, sometimes called white roads because they were paved with light-colored limestone cobbles and finished with stucco. The Sakbayab network connected quarries to building sites, linked different paths of cities together, and even connected entire cities across the Maya world. Some of these roads were 30 feet wide and elevated 3 feet above ground level to stay above mud and flooding during rainy season. They stretched for hundreds of kilometers in total. Building a Sak Bay was its own major construction project. Workers leveled the ground, laid a foundation, added layers of stones and fill, then finished it with that burnt lime cement and stucco coating. But once completed, these roads made transportation dramatically easier. A team of workers could haul stones over 60 miles using these roads, something that would be nearly impossible through raw jungle terrain. Near rivers and coasts, canoes moved materials by water, which was even more efficient when available. The famous suspension bridge at Yashilan stretched 63 meters across the Usumacinta River using henequen ropes, which are made from agave plant fibers. Yes, the same plant that gives us tequila also gave the Maya structural cables. That bridge could support workers transporting materials from one side to the other. The Maya understood that infrastructure investments paid off. Spending time building roads and bridges meant everything else went faster afterward. something American politicians could probably learn from. Platforms, drainage, and cores. Construction techniques themselves were sophisticated in ways that aren't immediately obvious. Every major structure started with a foundation platform. The Maya region gets intense rainfall and flooding is common. Elevating buildings on platforms solved drainage problems and prevented water damage. These platforms were carefully engineered with layers of stones, fill material, and surfaces that directed water away from structures. Basically, they figured out drainage before we invented gutters. The core of most buildings was rubble fill, basically broken stones and saskab packed together. This saved on the labor of cutting perfect blocks for areas nobody would see. Smart move. Around that core, they placed a veneer of carefully cut ashlar stones, fitted together precisely and bonded with lime mortar. The outer surface received the stucco finish and paint. This layered approach meant buildings were solid and stable while minimizing the amount of precise stonework needed. It's the architectural equivalent of only ironing the front of your shirt, because that's all anyone sees anyway. Nested pyramids, Matryoshka temples. Pyramids grew through a process that archaeologists call nested construction. The Maya would build a pyramid, use it for decades or even centuries, then build a bigger one. Instead of tearing down the old pyramid, they'd simply build the new one around it, completely encasing the earlier structure. Excavations of major pyramids have found 3, 4, sometimes 5 earlier pyramids hidden inside. It's like the Matryoshka doll built with religious monuments. Each layer was a complete building that got buried by the next generation's expansion. Corbel vaults, not Roman arches. Corbel arches were the Maya solution to creating roof spaces. They didn't have true arches with a keystone like the Romans developed. Instead, they stacked stones so each layer jutted out a bit further than the one below, gradually narrowing the gap until they could cap it with flat slabs. This created a distinctive triangular ceiling profile. To keep Corbel arches from collapsing inward, they used wooden cross ties for support and built walls thick enough to handle the lateral forces. Different cities developed variations on this basic technique. At Uxmal, builders used boot-shaped vault stones, wider at the top than bottom, which locked together more securely and reduced the chance of collapse. At Palenque, they created lattice roof cones, open frameworks on top of buildings that looked impressive while reducing weight and improving airflow. These weren't just decorative, they were engineering solutions to specific problems. Form following function. Architects today charge extra to explain that concept. Doorways often featured monster mouth designs, carved to look like you were entering through the jaws of a supernatural creature. This wasn't just art, though it definitely served religious symbolism. The thick frame of these doorways also reinforced the structural opening, distributing weight around the entrance. So you'd walk into a temple through what looked like a demon's mouth, which is one way to make sure people took religion seriously. Colonnades, rows of columns supporting roofs, added both grandeur and practical covered space for ceremonies or daily activities. Palaces included features that show real attention to livability. Multiple stories, towers for astronomical observation, lavatories with drainage systems, even steam baths. The palace at Palenque has a 3-story tower, corbelled passages, and rooms aligned to catch breezes. These weren't primitive shelters, they were comfortable, functional living and working spaces for elite families and administrators. Indoor plumbing and climate control, the Maya had it figured out while medieval Europe was still throwing chamber pots out windows. Ballcourts deserve special attention. The Maya ball game was deeply important, both as sport and ritual. Courts had either sloping or vertical sides depending on the city and era. The court at Copan features elegant slopes that frame sightlines perfectly. These weren't simple rectangles, they were carefully proportioned spaces where acoustics, viewing angles, and symbolic meanings all came together. Building them required precise measurement and skilled stone placement to get the angles right, and unlike modern sports stadiums, they didn't need to worry about parking lots. All of this construction depended on organized labor systems. The Maya didn't have massive slave populations building pyramids, despite what some old movies suggested. Instead, they used corvée labor, a system where households owed a certain amount of work time to community projects. This was rotational, so you might spend a few weeks per year working on temple construction, then return to do your farming or craft work. It's basically like jury duty but for building pyramids. This system worked because Maya society was hierarchical but also communal. Rulers directed major projects and controlled resources, but they did so within cultural frameworks where everyone had obligations and expectations. Building a new temple benefited the entire community through religious ceremonies, enhanced prestige, and practical functions. People participated partly through obligation and partly through genuine investment in their city's success. Specialization definitely existed. Stonecutters became experts at quarrying and shaping blocks. Plasterers knew exactly how to mix and apply stucco for durability. Artists trained in carving glyphs and creating murals. Archaeological evidence from places like Zoltan shows dedicated production districts where specialists made tools and worked on architectural elements. But these specialists worked alongside broader community labor, not as separate professional classes in the modern sense. Energetic studies, which calculate the person hours required for ancient construction, suggest that major buildings needed well over 100,000 person days of labor. It sounds overwhelming until you remember that Maya cities had populations in the tens of thousands, and projects spanned years or even decades. Spread that labor across a large population over extended time, and suddenly it becomes more manageable. It's like how you could theoretically clean your entire house in one weekend if you actually did it instead of just thinking about it. Recent archaeological work has also challenged old assumptions about labor requirements. Careful analysis at Copan showed that structures there needed fewer workers than earlier estimates suggested. Good organization, efficient techniques, and smart use of materials meant they accomplished more with less. The Maya weren't throwing unlimited labor at problems, they were optimizing processes. Lean manufacturing before Toyota made it famous. Reservoir cities and filtration. Water management integrated directly into urban design and showed the same engineering intelligence as building construction. Cities like Tikal had no nearby rivers or lakes. They depended entirely on rainwater. The solution was an extensive reservoir system built into the city layout. Plazas and courtyards were slightly sloped and paved to direct water into collection channels. These channels fed into reservoirs that could hold millions of liters. The Corriental Reservoir at Tikal held 58 million liters of water and included a filtration system using zeolite minerals. This is the oldest known water filtration system in the Western Hemisphere. Layers of sand and woven potate mats filtered out contaminants as water flowed into storage areas. The whole system needed periodic maintenance. Workers would drain, clean, and rebuild filtration layers to keep water quality high. This infrastructure sustains Tikal's huge population through dry seasons and droughts. Meanwhile, Flint, Michigan had a water crisis in the 21st century. Just saying. Tikal, Temple 1 and Tomb. Let's look at specific cities to see how all these techniques came together. Tikal stands as perhaps the most impressive example. Located in now what's Guatemala, Tikal's urban core covers 6 square miles, with outlying areas bringing the total to over 25 square miles. Temple 1, also called the Temple of the Great Jaguar, rises 47 meters high with a steep stairway climbing the pyramid's face. That's taller than the Statue of Liberty from ground to torch. The temple and the others around the Great Plaza were built using local limestone, transported by human carriers along Sakbeobi roads, and assembled with burnt lime mortar. Inside Temple 1 is the tomb of Hasal Chan Kawil, a powerful ruler. His burial chamber was carved from the pyramid's interior, with a corbelled ceiling and walls covered in glyphs describing his achievements. The pyramid was built around and over this tomb after his death. Everything from quarrying the stone to carving the glyphs to positioning millions of blocks happened through the methods we've been discussing. No wheels, no metal tools, no animals, just organized human effort and Stone Age technology applied with precision. Palenque, located in Chiapas, Mexico, shows different adaptations to its environment. Built on natural limestone rises and hilly terrain, Palenque's architects used the existing topography to enhance their buildings. The palace complex includes that 3-story tower, multiple courtyards, and intricate corbelled passages connecting different sections. The tower offers views across the site and aligns with astronomical events, serving as an observatory. Basically, it was their version of a planetarium combined with a penthouse view. The Temple of the Inscriptions at Palenque contains the tomb of Kanish Janab Pakal, one of the longest reigning Maya rulers. The temple pyramid has 9 levels representing the 9 levels of the underworld in Maya cosmology. Inside, a stairway descends into the pyramid's core, leading to a burial chamber with a massive stone sarcophagus carved from a single piece of limestone. The sarcophagus lid, weighing several tons and covered in elaborate carvings, was moved into position inside the pyramid before construction sealed it in. They essentially built a pyramid around a carved stone box that weighed as much as an SUV. Uxmal, Puuk-style mastery. Uxmal in Yucatan showcases Puuk architectural style with its distinctive features. The Pyramid of the Magician has unusual rounded corners rather than sharp edges, possible for seismic resistance in an earthquake-prone region. Smart thinking. The Nunnery Quadrangle features 4 buildings around a courtyard, each decorated with stone mosaics creating geometric patterns and monster masks. These mosaics required cutting thousands of small stones to precise shapes and fitting them together like a 3-dimensional puzzle. It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle where each piece weighs 50 pounds and you have to cement it to a wall. Copan in Honduras used volcanic tuff as its primary building material instead of limestone because that's what was locally available. Tuff is softer and easier to carve, allowing Copan's artists to create incredibly detailed sculptures. The hieroglyphic stairway has the longest known Maya text, with over 1,200 glyphs carved into the risers of the staircase. Every glyph was carved by hand using stone tools, and the entire stairway is assembled piece by piece up the pyramid's face. It's the ancient equivalent of writing a book on your staircase, but way more impressive. The Ballcourt at Copan demonstrates perfect proportions and acoustics. The sloping sides are angled precisely so that someone standing on one end can speak in a normal voice and be heard clearly at the other end, over 80 feet away. This wasn't accidental, it was engineered. The builders understood sound reflection and planned their angles accordingly. They built better acoustics than most modern conference rooms without any of our technology. These cities and dozens of others across the Maya world all rose to the same fundamental methods: local materials, stone tools, human transport, organized labor, and brilliant engineering. The specifics varied, each city adapted techniques to local conditions, but the core principles remained consistent over centuries and hundreds of miles. Modern technology is revealing even more about Maya construction. Lidar, which uses laser scanning from aircraft, can see through jungle canopy to reveal structures hidden beneath vegetation. Recent surveys have discovered thousands of previously unknown buildings, entire cities that were swallowed by the jungle after Maya civilization declined. These findings confirm that the scale of Maya urban development was even larger than we thought. Turns out there's more pyramids under all those trees, which is both exciting for archaeologists and terrifying for anyone who's ever gotten lost in the woods. Analysis of construction materials using geochemistry shows that some monuments used imported limestone, brought from specific quarries miles away for their superior quality or symbolic significance. This indicates trade networks and quality control. They weren't just using whatever stone was closest. They selected materials for specific purposes. At Max Na in Belize, researchers identified limestone brought from distant sources for particular buildings, suggesting these structures held special importance. Premium materials for premium buildings, a concept luxury real estate developers would appreciate. The legacy of Maya construction extends beyond archaeology and history. Their burnt lime cement was sophisticated material science, understanding chemical reactions and creating durable concrete with modern chemistry knowledge. Their Corbel arches solved structural problems elegantly. Their water filtration system used natural minerals effectively. These weren't lucky accidents. They were the results of experimentation, accumulated knowledge, and practical problem solving over generations. Contemporary Maya communities maintain some of these traditions. Tump lines are still used for transport. Traditional building methods appear in modern construction in rural areas. The knowledge didn't completely disappear, it adapted and persisted even after the great cities were abandoned. The question of why Maya cities were eventually abandoned is separate from how they were built, but it's worth noting that the structures themselves weren't the problem. Buildings didn't collapse, engineering was sound. When cities like Tikal were abandoned around 900 CE, it was due to complex factors including drought, warfare, political upheaval, and agricultural stress, not structural failure. Pyramids and temples stood empty but intact, waiting for archaeologists 1,000 years later. Understanding how the Maya built without modern technology challenges assumptions about what's necessary for civilization. We tend to think that technological advancement follows a set path, that you need certain tools before you can achieve certain results. The Maya proved that's not true. Different environments and resources lead to different solutions. Their solution set worked brilliantly for their circumstances, creating urban centers that rivaled anything else in the ancient world. For anyone visiting Maya ruins today, there's something humbling about standing at the base of a pyramid. Every stone was placed by human hands. Every carving was chipped out with stone tools. Every architectural decision was made without computers, without books from other civilizations, without YouTube tutorials. They figured it out themselves, adapted to their environment, built cities that have lasted over 1,000 years. Some modern buildings won't last 50 years before needing major repairs. The Maya achievement reminds us that human ingenuity isn't dependent on specific technologies. It's about solving problems with available resources, organizing effort effectively, and building on accumulated knowledge. They had limestone, obsidian, and human labor, so they developed techniques that maximize those advantages. Other civilizations had different resources and developed different techniques. Neither approach was inherently superior, they were optimized for different conditions. So we've covered the materials, tools, transportation, construction techniques, labor organization, water management, and specific examples that answer how the Maya built their cities. The answer isn't simple because the achievement wasn't simple. It was a comprehensive system which every part supported every other part. Good roads made material transport feasible, which enabled large buildings, which required organized labor, which needed water infrastructure to support urban populations, which justified building roads. Everything connected, like a really complicated but functional machine made entirely of rocks and human determination. The Maya built cities that rivaled Rome, Athens, or any other ancient civilization using Stone Age technology and human power. They did it through intelligence, organization, environmental adaptation, and accumulated knowledge passed across generations. No wheels, no metal tools, no beasts of burden, no problem. Just one of history's most impressive engineering achievements, built one stone at a time by people who refused to let the absence of modern tools slow them down. Human determination combined with smart engineering can accomplish anything. The Maya proved that without question. Their pyramids still standing today continue proving it every single day. Next time your Wi-Fi goes out and you think civilization is collapsing, remember that the Maya built entire cities with sharp rocks and really good planning.